forgotten the intro. Oh, it doesn't matter. We'll just do one without an intro. Yes, I've been having issues all day with audio and everything. Hello, everybody. Sorry, no intro.
Hi, Tim. You pushed the live button, and I was waiting for the music. That's awesome.
I know. I've been rearranging everything, and I forgot to do an intro video. Well, there is actually one on my hard disk somewhere. I haven't uploaded it.
Your sound is fine. So if everyone closes their eyes and pretends like it's a podcast, we're just we're good. My internet. My internet keeps going down at my apartment, so it's not working well for me or my boys. It's hi Andrea, hi Tim. Yay, Andrea. Tim, I asked Tim Sohn to see who invented donuts to go along with our quiz later. There's a little preview for you. Tim, how are you doing over there in England? How is the current state of your country? How are you doing, Tim?
How am I doing? Well, actually, statistically, England and the United Kingdom, because they are two different entities, are doing quite well with COVID. The death rate and the case numbers are going down quite a lot recently. So that's good. And they've announced now that they're opening up outdoor swimming pools and outdoor theatres this weekend. And then gyms and indoor gyms and something else opening in 3 weeks. So they're like, last weekend the pubs reopened, but they're socially distanced. So you're not, if you sit inside, you're supposed to be like the 2 meter distance. And also you have to give your name and address to the bartender person so that if there's an outbreak later, they can send everybody like test and trace stuff.
Oh, wow.
But outside you can kind of drink as much as you like, sort of thing. You can so yes, technology's been on my mind, Andrea. Woohoo! Everything's slow at the moment. So yeah, that's the situation in the UK. So yeah. Obviously, I've been monitoring the US situation, which seems to be a bit of a mess, to be honest.
All I can answer for is my city. America is all over the place.
Yeah.
Is closing down again somewhat. We can eat outside at restaurants. Patios are open at this point. Inside is not open at all. Bars are closed and theaters are closed. Other thing, I can't remember everything that's closed, but we kind of did a mini shutdown again to try to contain the virus. Unfortunately, my point of view. Go ahead.
Well, from my point of view, as a non-American looking in. And this is probably unfair, and because obviously it varies from state to state, but it kind of looked like the US just reopened in the same way that they were closed. There wasn't really any particular social distancing going on, no particular changes in restaurants or anything else. It was just kind of like, we'll have a lockdown and then we'll just go back to how it was afterwards. Where in the UK, everything's very strictly. Like they brought in stupid regulations for absolutely everything in terms of, and I think even though in some ways it feels a bit silly at times with all the amount of plexiglass that seems to have appeared in shops and other places, I think that's helped a lot. Well, everybody in the US just seems to be like, well, we'll wear a mask and then we'll just have everything like it was. And it's like, well, that's not a great way to do it. there doesn't seem to be any joined up thinking there in terms of like. But I think there is a lack of leadership in the US. Not meaning to insinuate anything about your president, but I think that's a big issue.
You know, Kim, I may agree with you. As far as lockdown and all that, it varies by states. Some of our governors made different choices than others. I thought our governor here in California did a very good job of locking us down immediately. And you can see worldwide, the countries that have had the lowest cases of outbreak did things much different than the US. And I wish that our country would look to some of our neighbors, perhaps Canada, perhaps New Zealand, for examples on how to handle a crisis like this, because it feels like we're sinking fast, and everyone's kind of pointing fingers rather than coming up with a solution. And right now we need a solution because we're headed towards flu season. I mean, the reality is we're headed towards flu season, and we have to be thinking about that.
Yeah, well, it's just the fact that like you've got all these mass gatherings going on, either demonstrations or Trump's rallies and all the rest of it, and it's like, well, like whoever the mass gathering is for, it's not like helping anybody. And there's lots of things like that. But I mean, I think a lot of the US spirit of freedom, so to speak, and the embedded rights are in some ways hampering things, in as much as people don't want to be necessarily telling people to stay indoors and do all the rest of it.
Yeah.
While in the UK and other places, I mean, there was something I was watching a video online about the very stupidly strict lockdown they've done in Australia for this block of flats, well, like this set of block of flats, like housing project in Melbourne. The police have basically surrounded it, and they've stopped anybody coming in and going out for 5 days. And I know a lot of people from a human rights view are like, well, that's like these people are in fact being imprisoned by the state. But that is the kind of thing that is effective. I mean, it's like there isn't going to be anybody breaking the quarantine because they can't get out of the flats. So,
I mean, the bottom line is we learn in kindergarten that our choices affect other people. And if we could think every day, how is the choice right now possibly going to affect someone else? I might not be affected as much as someone else who is higher risk, and so on. Although we have seen that people who aren't high risk still end up with huge medical consequences. So if we could, I don't know, this could get heated real fast with me.
Well,
the bottom line is,
the problem is, like, it's very easy to misread all the statistics, and a lot of it won't be clear until a long time afterwards. It's like in the UK death figures and everything look terrible, and they are. But a large chunk, it's like 40% of the UK deaths figure are deaths in care homes, which is like old people's homes.
Yeah.
And that was because of basically because they were trying to clear the hospitals of patients as quickly as possible because they were expecting to be overwhelmed. They discharged whole loads of old patients from the hospital back to care homes without properly testing them to see if they recovered of COVID. And then they infected all the care home system. So a huge chunk of the extra deaths relatively in the UK are to do with this failure in care homes. But that doesn't mean that what we've done for everything else is necessarily bad. And similarly, like places like Sweden, people have like looked at issues in Sweden about how the fact they didn't lock down and how that was so terrible and all the rest of it. But everybody kind of seems to be very biased in the way that they look at all the data and all of the things. And it's like, well, it's a bit early to say. And the trouble is everybody's got their hobby horses about what they think it's going to work, or what's right and what's not. And it's kind of like, well, the obvious things like avoiding people and washing your hands. I mean, and wearing a mask in the right circumstances. So public transport certainly makes sense to wear a mask because you're not going to be talking to anybody and you're in a confined space.
Yeah.
So it's the obvious things, but everybody then gets on to like, oh, well, we should lock down sooner or we should do this. And they're trying to score points rather than be helpful. But anyway, that's my view.
No, you're right. I mean, the truth is, too, putting a percentage on human life is, and a statistic on human life is, again, it can make me, it's very sad to me.
Well, yeah, but I mean, governments do that all the time. I mean, as somebody pointed out, and it's like, if you wanted to, the government could save a lot of human lives by lowering the speed limit on every highway to like 20 miles an hour. And that would save a substantial number of lives in like everywhere around the world. But there's always this trade-off between like freedom and like finance and the rest of it. I mean, the trouble is in the medical system, in the UK especially, nobody wants to be the person who says that Johnny can't be treated for stupidly expensive condition he's got to do, but they just budget in other ways, and Johnny mysteriously never gets these expensive pills that he needs. So yeah, I mean, you're right in many ways, but there has to be a trade-off there, and that's what governments are supposed to be there for, so the rest of us don't have to think about these things.
Yeah,
but they've not been doing a good job of it. It's trouble. Anyway, so cool. I'm not sure we've gone on the hour.
We could go a lot of places with this, but you brought up something interesting on Tuesday about social media, and that got us into a topic that we've discussed quite a bit, Tim, because you and I kind of have a passion for social media in a variety of ways. Can you tell us a little bit about remind me what we were talking about? Because I think it's important.
Well, I think this is what we were talking about, the aspect of it, was there was a video on Twitter that somebody shared, and I've seen it shared on Facebook as well, of this woman who was driving round and round this gas station, always with her car coming in, and then like she couldn't get the petrol pump over, or gas pump or whatever you call it, over to the other side. She was always on the other side, the gas thing, and this person was filming her going round. And then in the original Twitter post I saw, there was a lot of negative stuff about like idiots like this can vote, and there was lots of abuse about this poor woman. And the point I made, and I made it on Twitter to the person who posted it, who I don't blame for doing, well, she retweeted it actually, was that you have no idea what is happening in people's lives. So this woman who was like filmed going round and round, she wasn't harming anybody. She was just clearly in some sort of daze. And she could have been coming back from the hospital where her husband had died of COVID that day, and she could have been just in a daze going round and round. You have no idea what's happening in people's lives on social media. And this is there's just this total failure of, it's not even empathy. It's like almost just like you do not know what is happening in people's lives on social. So be very careful before you're condemning or making fun of people, because it's like, that was my first thought, is like, she must have been in a really bad spot and people are making fun of her. And it's like, oh, what idiot, like, I'll call her Karen or whatever. And it's like, well, it's not very nice. And it's quite a nasty feature of social media, especially Twitter.
I think that turns into bullying really fast. It's interesting to me that people like to be part of these anti-bullying campaigns, and yet there will become I call it mob mentality I've seen it especially on Twitter and Facebook really, really fast for an event like you explained, where the woman kept driving around. Like you said, the gas station couldn't figure out what side of the car the tank was on. I've done that. I've done that. That's, for me, it's part of anxiety and CPTSD. Your brain cannot, it's trying to hold so many things at once. Maybe you're in the midst of a trauma. Your brain can only hold so much at one time. And so something right there at the forefront goes missing and you just can't think straight. Like you said, we just don't know. So the mob mentality on Twitter becomes bullying real fast. I consider that bullying. And the damage it does to your psyche on social media to be bullied in that way. It's not funny to me. I mean, I admit I'm highly sensitive, but the sarcasm that goes on in social media, the mob mentality, and then that turns into bullying really fast. It's not okay.
Yeah.
I don't like it. I don't like it.
No, it's not. So we've agreed, like, it's not okay to bully people on Twitter, but the reason why people do it is because they don't want to be bullied themselves. This is always, I mean, it's back to the whole playground thing. But normally in human society, all the bullying stuff and everything happens in school, and then well, I mean, there's always an element of bullying in like adult life and society, but it's got really bad lately. And social media, it's like people don't want to be, they join in mocking whoever the person or whatever the object, because then they don't want to, they're worried about being the person who's next to be bullied or cancelled or whatever you want to call it. And it's like nobody's saying, like, well, you have no idea what's happening in this person's life. I mean, there was I can't remember, I think it's like Caroline Plack or somebody. There was a UK celebrity who was basically committed suicide after like a whole load of online bullying. And after her death, everybody was like, oh, like, it was so terrible. And it's like, well, the same people who bully people on Twitter are the same people who put stuff like be kind in their profile or be good to people or whatever. Like they're on stage and then they're bullying people the next minute. And it's peculiar to me.
There's a way to have constructive conversation. There's a way to disagree without saying, you're so stupid. Oh, you're this, that. That's not constructive conversation. If you disagree with someone, we can say, that's an interesting point you made. What do you think about this? There's a way to do constructive conversation that we can disagree, and I think that's healthy, without putting someone down. And then everyone jumping on the bandwagon and suddenly calling names and putting people down and belittling. And it's okay. This is the other thing. It's okay to jump in and say, wow, this behavior is not okay. And I think that's scary because suddenly you're suddenly going to be the victim now of the mob behavior. And the mob behavior in social media is scary. Yeah, Andrea said quite right about the bullying. It's so ridiculous and amazing that adults choose to engage in this behavior still.
So the comments back up again now. So this is what we were talking about. I took it down just as you started with it.
You did.
I think this is another. Yeah, some people never do mature, and I think that's a problem in society in general lately. It's a lot easier not to become like an adult. That makes any kind of sense. Like lots of people seem to have like got stuck at the childhood stage and they never grow up. And you think, oh, that's wonderful because everybody wants to be a child and the rest of it. But the trouble is, children have lots of issues as well. It's like there is a wonderful element to children that gets lost a lot of the time in adults. But there are also lots of very bad points about childish behaviour. I mean, there is saying behaviour is childish is not a compliment usually.
Everything we need to know, we learned in kindergarten. Honestly, I was a preschool teacher for a while, and I would even say that everything we need to know about how to successfully be in society, we learn in preschool and kindergarten. It's be kind, be courteous to your neighbor, don't be mean. I mean, don't call people names. Beth is saying it is hard for us in America to teach our children about bullying when the current president is a bully and is all over social media. That raises a good example. I mean, how do we, as a society, show that our hearts are ultimately good and kind when perhaps leadership might be showing something else?
Don't know. I mean, a point I've made, I probably have mentioned it on this show because I have a habit of waffling on about things, but I think lots of government and societal structures need updating. So like in the UK, lots of our institutions are from like the 18th century or like elements from like the 16th century. And in the US, like your constitution's from like 1790, something like that. Well, it was written in various bits, but it was a totally different time then. And it's like, well, no wonder you've got institutional issues because your institutions were written 200 years ago. And I think a lot of these kind of issues could be addressed by having to update things. I mean, it's like if you went to Walmart and you discovered that their policies about stocking the shelves were from 200 years ago, you probably wouldn't go there again, would you? Well, you probably wouldn't go there anyway. But for some reason, it becomes tradition, and then it's like this is our tradition and our constitution, and it must be observed like a religious document.
Do you believe that ultimately? Hi, Tim. Do you believe that ultimately? Humans are inherently good and kind, and that wins in the end, regardless of our leadership? Can there be kind of a...
You put this as a voted thing on Twitter, didn't you?
I did. I did, and you know why, Tim? I based it on a book that I read with James. We read a book called Humankind by Rutger Bregman. I highly recommend that book. He's a Dutch historian and researcher who did a lot of research on human kindness and how he believes that prevails. And he kind of went in depth with studying stories that we might be familiar with, but doing the background and research on those stories, in that media often portrays one story, the story that's going to be shown around the world, and may not be the entire story. Often there's a behind the scenes stories of kindness and goodness that is happening, where of course the media needs to show the drama to get viewers and attention and ratings. So that book is a game changer. It's life-changing. I mean, if you can ask questions and read it and allow yourself to learn and unlearn, it's just so good. And I think it's a New York Times bestseller now. I know that it went to UK number one bookseller in the UK really, really fast. Highly recommend. And if you're not following him already, Rutger Bregman is a great kind of a mind for us to be watching.
We'll put the link to the book in the comment after the show is over.
Yeah, I'll put the link in the comment, Beth. Thank you. Yeah. There was a real good review that was just put out too, that would be good to read. We'll put that link up as well. I think everyone should read it. It gives a really perspective. What were you saying, Tim?
To answer your question, I actually voted in your poll about whether, and I voted for yes. I think people are ultimate, but it wasn't as easy a choice as it should have been. I would say yes with a massive asterisk. I think people are born with kindness, but they're also born with lots of other bad attributes, which they usually get rid of. And sometimes the kindness goes as well. That's the unfortunate thing. It's very hard actually when you're very kind to people and you're younger, and then people take advantage of you, which happens to everybody at some stage in their life.
Yeah.
You can be all kind and nice to people, and then they abuse you and like take advantage of you. I think the true measure of a person is people who can carry on being kind even after they've been exploited by other people, rather than just putting the guard up and saying, I'm not going to be nice to anybody now.
Yeah.
I think that's you're kind.
Yeah. Tim says, y'all are kind. Tim, you're kind. By the way, Tim, your piano playing recently. Pretty awesome. Tim's been playing the piano on his Facebook page. It's beautiful.
Yes, I saw.
I think,
most of the time, after you.
I think that poll has been staying pretty consistently even. I've watched it kind of go back and forth. It's gotten quite a few votes as far as whether people think, whether we think humanity is inherently kind. And someone made a really good comment below the question. And I realized when I put the question up, it could add some discussion, some good constructive discussion, I should say. Hi, Chrissy. Because it's not a straightforward answer. There's a lot of things that go around it. I truly believe that humanity is inherently kind. I believe that we need to, at some point, learn boundaries. I think boundaries are not being unkind. It's showing kind to ourselves and showing kindness to other people in a healthy manner. And that's a whole other discussion. But I think hope comes with believing in humanity and that the common person is actually kind when allowed to be. I mean, we saw it when the virus first broke out. We saw all kinds of examples of people leaving toilet paper for their neighbors or notes on doorsteps. If you need me to go grocery shopping, I will for you. And, a whole bunch of examples like that. And it's like this underground thing that humanity does kind of behind the scenes, almost like a whisper. And we don't necessarily see it because it's not shown as a top story in media.
Yeah, well, I think there's an element of like when people aren't in a state of fear, then kindness comes out a lot more. I think when people are worried and they're like fearful about, like they see on the TV all the like protesters out and people shooting people and all the rest of it, that's when they tend to clam up, and it's all about like it's the protection kind of thing that happens. But when people are feeling less fearful, they tend to be more kind generally, in my humble opinion.
Chrissy made a really good point. I think humanity is kind when people meet people in person. There's a wall of protection for rudeness online. It is harder to be mean in real life. That's so true. It's so, it's so important for us to, I always say, I'm kind of symbolic here, but meet at the table, listen to stories, share stories, and become a really good listener. Because when we do that, we start to realize we're more alike than different. But are we willing to listen? Are we willing to listen to people who may not be like us and see why they're making the choices they're doing? Because usually they have a really good reason. If we're willing to step aside and listen and actively listen.
Yeah, well, I think one of the big problems with people, and this is a problem with going from basically a localized society where people only had people nearby to them to like talk to. In the 18th century, people were in like the nearest village or whatever. To now, is that the old mantra of treat people the way you want to be treated yourself only takes you so far, because often people from different cultures or different groups or different backgrounds have very different responses to things. Something that maybe you don't have a problem with at all can really, really upset or trigger somebody else, and you have no idea about that. But the way to deal with that is in both ways. Like, if you say something to somebody and they get really upset, then you should be mindful of that you've done something, but they should also be mindful that they need to explain why it's. I mean, you may have been, let's say you were attacked by a mongoose as a child, and then I happen to say I own a mongoose palm. I don't know why I end up with mongoose examples all the time, but it could be like that could really trigger you, and then it's like, oh my God, you have this traumatic flashback of being attacked by a mongoose as a child, and I would have no idea what the problem was.
Yeah.
But there is a responsibility on both sides to kind of say, like, let's try and understand what happened here, rather than just like block or like F off or whatever. Or the natural response in many ways is then to the person who's unintentionally offended somebody thinks the other person doesn't understand the other person, and you get into this massive escalation of, like, before you know, it's World War III.
You know, it's
what is a mongoose anyway? I have no idea. It's not a UK thing. It's some sort of African animal, I think. It's like an anteater.
What is a mongoose? Tim likes to come up with the abstract for good examples. I mean, I think that it's important for our society at this point to become trauma informed. And maybe we need to show examples of having healthy discussions. If I say, Tim, I'm triggered when I come to your mongoose farm, and this is why.
Yeah.
And Tim, you can say, I'm sorry to hear that, Christelle. How can I help this? How can I help you overcome this? How can I help this be better? You're looking at mongoose. I mean, let's practice having healthy discussion, and let's also not be so easily offended in the midst of those discussions, because it does. You're right. It takes two people.
Yeah.
And can we practice?
Thing? I've no idea. I just made that up. So
I think
I don't do. I think they only eat Krispy Kreme. Yeah, maybe they do. It's like
they only eat Krispy Kreme. I think that our discussion it starts with us. If each one of us can do our part and practice being active listeners, practice being engaging in healthy conversation, being willing to not be easily offended and ask questions.
Yeah, make an effort. I mean, that's the thing on all sides, is make an effort.
Yeah.
Make some sort of effort to try and understand the other person's point of view. I mean, it's like,
Tim, I don't understand what you're saying. There may be a cultural difference here between UK and US. Can you help me understand?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then
well, we're two countries separated by a common language.
You know what? It happens sometimes. I think I've said so many times in recent days, I think we're speaking different English. help me understand. I mean, Andrea, Tim is really good at getting us hungry for Krispy Kreme donuts. And honestly, in general, I'm watching the donut conversation happen over here.
Yeah, the donut.
I think up above, Tim, either Beth or Chrissy made a point about
what Chrissy's triggered by mongooses. That one.
I triggered you all talking about mongoose farms. Can we just go back to llamas?
I don't think that's the comment. You what was here? It's a bicycle from the 1980s. Hurt people. This is like more profound.
Hurt people. It's so true.
Yeah.
It's so true. And we understanding that we don't have to take on their hurt. We can be empathetic, but we don't have to take on their hurt and realize. And something I learned in trauma-informed care is we say, what happened?
Yeah.
We don't say, why are you being like this? You're so this. What happened? Can you explain your story to me?
Well, the trouble is, though, a lot of the time with trauma, a lot of time with anything, a lot of the people it's coming to have no idea. They really can't formulate what happened because they don't necessarily understand. Especially if you're on some sort of anxiety or like other state, it could be kind of like you get bits and pieces, but you don't really know what happened until maybe a long time afterwards. Often it's like a year or two afterwards, and then I really like, oh, that's what happened.
Oh, no, it's so true. It's so true. And that's where us realizing that, I mean, we're going way deep here, but us realizing that right now we're living in a very trauma-induced society. Every one of us has some sort of trauma on us, and we really have to be cautious and careful and treat each other with kindness and respect and love. And that's the bottom line. And it starts with us, us being willing to say, you know what, I'm going to really stop. I'm going to really listen. I'm going to really not react immediately. And it just starts with each of us making that choice. Beth is saying, does anyone keep losing the audio portion, or is it just me? We are having some technical difficulties, Beth. So it's probably not just you. We're working on it.
Well, we're not working on it, but we're just putting up with it. There's apparently, like, I had a text from the cable company saying that they fixed it on last Sunday, and then they sent me another one this Monday just saying next Sunday they're going to fix the issues, the intermittent fault that I've been having with my broadband for about a month, which is getting really annoying. The other thing was, is Krispy Kreme in the UK? And the answer is yes. Krispy Kreme is. Dunkin' isn't in the UK as far as I'm aware. I don't think there's a Dunkin' Donut in the UK. Might be, but not. Maybe like one in London. Andrea hasn't lost audio.
Have you had Dunkin' coffee, Tim?
I have. It's better than Starbucks, but it's still quite underwhelming. I mean, not meaning to insinuate anything, but US coffee is pretty terrible in general by international standards. British coffee is not much better, really. I mean, a lot. To be fair, some of your kind of local outlets are a lot better. The chain coffee in the US is terrible. I mean,
some of our this is why I love supporting, well, one of a billion reasons why I love supporting local, though, is oftentimes they will roast their own coffee beans, and they will import them very strategically and purposely, choosing beans that taste good to them, or based on maybe somewhere they want to help promote or whatever. There's actually a lot of purpose that goes into some of our locally owned establishments, and it's really interesting when we start studying that. But yeah, you're right. Not much.
Okay. Yeah, France and Italy have awesome coffee. Like,
what did you say?
And the best coffee I've ever had was somewhere on the south coast of France, near the Italian border. So that's kind of that area. I mean, the best coffee I've had in the US is actually in Wichita, where Chrissy's from. But again, it's kind of like chain coffee's generally terrible. I think the chain is called Costa. Yeah, it's Costa Coffee is the one that Andrea is talking about.
Okay.
So I'll put this up for replay viewers.
San Diego, we have some really good local coffee shops and local breweries that, when they're open, are incredible to support. We're kind of blowing up in the coffee world and the local brewery world. So
I have to say, and some of the British viewers may hate me for saying this, but I think actually a lot of the US microbrewery brewed beers are better than the British ones. British microbrewery kind of it all tends to be more chain, but that's because of the UK is very, very densely populated compared to the US, so it makes sense to have you brew it in a brewery and ship it out. Well, in the US, it makes a lot more sense to brew on site and to have microbreweries, because otherwise you've got to have loads of tanker vans driving for miles with bloody beer. So I think that's I mean, everybody seems to think because I'm British I know a lot about beer, and I really don't know that much about beer whatsoever.
We
I
have
know a lot about wine, but I don't know much about beer.
about wine. Yeah, we have a great beer culture here, at least in San Diego.
Yeah.
Really neat
I mean,
establishments. It's fairly new, though. I mean, this is fairly recent that this
yeah,
started.
I mean, wine in the US is terrible compared to in Europe and the UK. The selection of wines you have is just dire. I mean, you have US wines. I think it's because of tariffs and other things. Because well, at least at the moment, we left the EU formally in like last December, but we're still sort of in the EU. We're in this transition period. So we get access to all the French and Italian and like German and all the other wines without tariff put on them. So like we have access to so many good wines in the UK compared to what in the US. I think because there's such high tariffs on wines from like Europe that you just don't have the choice. You can probably get them, but I mean there are lots of good US wines to be fair. But I think that's somewhere where you kind of I think that's where Europe's better in a way. We've got access to more wines than in the US.
Mm-hmm. Wine and cheese.
Yeah,
I
think cheese is terrible as well. So
well, and I hear let's see the Scottish. I'm losing words. Help me here. What do you go taste in Scotland?
whiskey.
Whiskey. Thank you. I've heard of the Scottish whiskey. I haven't tried it yet. The truth is, Tim, I actually don't drink a lot, but on occasion I do like to sample a really good dark, rich stout. We have some really good ones here in San Diego. In fact, we have Belching Beaver has a peanut butter stout that was my favorite. I went to Montreal and I was able to taste another peanut butter stout up there. I don't remember the brand though, and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
But it's funny, we talk about beer and wine. I actually don't drink that much, but on occasion I do enjoy sampling a good stout.
But that's good because that actually means you remember what the hell the stuff tastes like. It's not like the situation where you drink like 4 bottles of wine and then you remember it's the best wine ever, but you can't remember anything about it because you're too drunk and whatever. So,
yeah, I enjoy
just tasting it. It's probably better, and you're more likely to actually remember what the hell you actually had.
I enjoy a flight of samples at a good local brewery and some good food and some good conversation, and I really enjoyed that. So, Tim, are you ready for a mini quiz?
Oh, it's a mini quiz. Are you downplaying it because
it's a mini quiz?
You're lacking confidence in your quiz thing, or is it genuinely just a very short quiz?
It's a somewhat short quiz. Do you have a pen and paper?
Or is it a quiz of small people? Should I know about small people for the mini quiz?
Is
it like?
Do you have a piece of paper? Do you have a piece of paper and a pen?
I've got a piece of paper and a pen.
We're doing this the way all the stations does their quizzes, where they read the question, you answer the question, and then I'll go back and give some answers. I keep mentioning all the stations because actually they're UK based. They go around to railroad stations and show their trips throughout the UK, and it's fun to watch. It's just a fun, like family friendly show to watch.
I have actually watched a couple of their videos. Before you even mentioned them, I wouldn't say it's that fun to watch. I kind of confused because it's like stations aren't as exciting to me because we have much more like exposure to stations in the UK than in the US. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of interesting.
It's relaxing and they're fun and refreshing to watch in the midst of.
So what do I need to pen on the paper for then? Am I writing down answers or am I not?
Writing down the answers. Okay, so here's the quiz. The quiz is inventions. Is the invention I name a UK invention or a US invention? So really, who invented it? The The United States.
Oh no, you could get into a world of hurt with this quiz.
Well,
because
okay.
every country claims they invented everything.
I know that.
Is that the first person who created it, or is it the first person who developed it?
I know there could be a lot of discussion that comes out of this, actually, because once I started researching a little bit further, I was like, wait a minute. And actually, even the first answers that come to mind, we can keep going back further and further and further.
Yeah.
Everyone listening and watching, be willing, I'm going to say right now, be willing to go back and research, because it gets real. This to me got really interesting. And I'm keeping it simple for the sake of the quiz for the most part. But it gets really interesting, like I said, to go back and kind of research and realize, wait a minute, neither the US or the UK. Let's go back even further. Or wait a minute, here in the US, we heard it was us. Actually, it was the UK, or the UK, vice versa. So
yeah,
be willing to research. Don't take my complete word on it. I'm keeping it pretty basic, because there's a lot more history to this than what we've been commonly taught. Read. It's important. Okay. Was this US or UK invented? The first toothbrush.
Neither, I would have thought. First toothbrush, is that a Chinese thing? Or do I have to pick one? I'll say US then. I have to pick one.
I'm writing your answer down for you. So you're saying, who do you think, UK or US?
Well, I don't. I think toothbrushes have been around. I think it might be like the Roman Empire or somewhere. But if I had to say, I'd say US, because I don't know.
Okay, that might be a good one to go research. But I'm writing down your answer as US. Number 2. Who invented potato chips? US or UK?
Is that chips as in UK chips or US chips?
Forgot. Yes. This is a good example. This is
are they crisps or are they
yes.
they're crisp.
Crunch. You know the
I'll go UK with that.
UK. Okay.
I don't know, but
and that's a good example of we're speaking different English.
Yeah.
And I know, that's funny. Potato chips, crisps, that's the same. Okay. So you're choosing UK.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Are you ready for this one?
Okay.
Dun, da, da, da. The electric light bulb. Was that US or UK?
That's a UK one. Edison developed it, but he wasn't the first person. It was something like Robert Bell in Scotland who actually, but there were simultaneous ones in like UK, France, and all around the same time. But I'll go UK.
Okay.
Edison didn't invent anything. He developed stuff. He was the developer. He wasn't really an inventor. He didn't really invent anything.
Yeah, this is where these facts got interesting for me as I started researching more and more and going, yeah, we need to watch some YouTube videos and start reading a bit more. It got interesting to me. Okay, next question. Who invented cotton candy? US or UK?
Well, we don't call it cotton candy.
I've heard that. Floss, or what do you call it?
Yeah, candy floss.
Candy
floss.
Yeah.
Candy floss in the UK. Mm-hmm. So, well, definitely the US created cotton candy because we don't have it. I have no idea. I'll go the US because, yeah, I can always say, even if it was the UK, that we invented candy floss and you invented cotton candy.
So funny. And the other thing is, it also depends on which site you pull up, UK or you really have to go back and research this. So cotton candy, you call it candy floss. Is that what you said?
Candy floss, yeah.
Candy floss, okay. And you're saying US. Okay, so next question. Who invented the modern computer? The United States or the United Kingdom?
The modern computer, I think it was the UK. I think it's like ENIAC or something. I mean, the trouble is, like, the Charles Babbage created one in 1880. Well, he designed one, but he never actually built the thing. And then there was one, the Enigma. The people who cracked Enigma, they had a computer. They had a modern computer. So I'd say UK, but it could be. You could argue it's the US. It depends on what level of what you mean by modern. The first one with like microchips in it would be the US, but with valves. I remember I used to be a bloody computer programmer.
I know. I'm telling you, we need to do this again.
So I'd say UK. I'd say the Enigma, the machines they used to crack the Enigma codes.
Okay. Again, we should do this again because, again, it gets really, really, really interesting going way back and going, wait a minute, what I was taught may not be true. And I'm admitting my answers may not be like, don't hold this, because I kept it fairly basic, realizing that there's more history there.
Yeah.
Okay. US or UK, the GPS?
US. Purely because I know that the satellites are American ones for that. The UK is into some sort of European version of it, and now they're talking about launching their own satellites for their own. So, it depends like who invented it. It's like, was it the person who launched the satellites, or was it the person who came up with the concept in the first place? Mm-hmm. So I'd go US.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next, steam engine. Was it UK or US?
UK. It was Thomas Newcomen. I mean, are you talking about steam engine as in a steam engine, or are you talking about one on trains? I think it's UK in either case, but because they had a steam engine for pumping water out of mines, which was the Newcomen one, but it was hideously inefficient, and it needed to be next to the mine so they could burn enough coal to actually do it.
Yeah, I'll read a little bit more when I give you the answer. Okay, so the chocolate bar, was that UK or US?
I'd probably say China or Italy or somewhere.
I mean, most of these are probably actually not US or UK.
Or UK.
Honestly.
I think this one, I think it's neither, but if I had to go, I'll go UK.
Okay. Again, like I said, we're keeping it, but most likely there's a lot more history. Okay, first successful flight. This one gets really interesting, and this could be a whole research project.
Are you talking about hot air balloons?
But to keep it basic.
Hot air balloons? Are you talking about? Because that would be France if it was the first, like,
first successful flight to like get into the air.
Yeah, well, that'd be France. First hot air balloon, the Montgomery brothers in 17, whatever it was. Okay. You haven't done your research in this quiz, have you?
I have, and it's first successful flight. I was going with first successful flight using gliders.
Ooh.
Because the fact that we could go back in history and look at a lot of different.
Yeah, well, this is the trouble with it, like, isn't it? A glider. I don't know. It might be UK, but it's probably the US. I mean, the US is the first panel flight, obviously with the Wright brothers. I don't know who the first glider was, but they say the French, I think the first. Well, I don't know. The gliders might actually have been before them, but in which case it wouldn't have been the US because unless the Native Americans did it.
So
they probably did.
I
It's
worded
probably been run in history.
it for successful flight on purpose, because again, this is a whole loaded question when you really go back and research who did what, when, where, and how. Okay, a couple more. We can't look too deep because it's every question I asked is like a whole research. It's honestly a research project.
I mean, I remember as a kid, I went on we went on holiday to France, and they had this kind of card somewhere, and all of the stuff was all invented by the French, and the French inventors of all of these things. So it kind of depends what country in the world you go to for a lot of them.
Depends on who wrote the history book, honestly.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, it gets interesting when we're willing to research and go, wait a minute, this happened actually farther back, and it actually was, like you said, in China or in, I don't know, wherever. It gets really interesting to read and research. But for the sake of this quiz, I'm keeping it basic. The first mammal clone, where was that done?
I think it was in the UK. I think it was Dolly the sheep, but no. I mean, don't know if they did like a mouse or something. I mean, a sheep's quite complicated. It probably wouldn't be the first thing you would start with, would it? So maybe it was the US. I don't know. I'll say UK though, because they cloned a sheep, and I know that was done in the UK, and that kind of suggests they were ahead, unless there was some sort of cloning race going on in the thing between the US and like the space race. Like, which animals can we clone?
Last question. Who invented the microwave?
Well, it was Mr. Microwave. No. I think that's US. I think it's Marconi. I'm not entirely sure. Might have been UK. I'll go US because that mate. Probably on your answers, it's just US.
No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that on purpose, because as I was researching, I was learning a lot. And I actually did it because of what I was studying. And like I said, again, I'm going to keep saying this. These answers are basic. Study and go back with your kids or whoever, or just for your own sake, and learn something really interesting, because most of these go way, way, way back. And it was neither the US or the K, really. But I found something interesting too. According to a Japanese research firm, 40% of the world's invention are actually UK, 24% of the world's inventions are France, and 20% of the world's inventions are United States.
Yeah. And that's because of the amount of capital that's available. So like in the Industrial Revolution, there was so much money floating around in the UK that they could invent all sorts of things. And similarly, like in this century, it's all the money's been in the US.
Yeah. Well,
the French had money for a while.
And it depends on what you're looking at too, because like you said, when I asked about the toothbrush, there's a good chance it goes back way farther. I mean, I'm
sure I'm sure it's China or somewhere they created, because you like bamboo, like you do that. But what is the answer for the toothbrush then?
Okay.
Tell me what your answer.
My research, according to my research online, in 1770, the first toothbrush was invented by the United Kingdom. I didn't write down more details than that, but 1770, first toothbrush, United Kingdom. Potato chips or crisps, 1853 by George Crumb in the United States.
Did I say? I said UK, didn't I?
Oh. UK, yeah. Google it and see if Google it.
Well, I'll accept that one, because I've no idea who invented the first crisp.
Yeah.
It was Mr. Crisp.
The electric light bulb.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't. It wasn't. I think it was the Scottish guy who did it. But there was a French guy who did it as well at the same time. There was I think there was multiple people. This is the trouble. A lot of the time, people were multiply developing concepts, and then they never commercially develop it.
It was never written down, and I accept that completely. What I wrote down was in January of 1879, Joseph Swan from the United Kingdom basically did the exact same thing that Edison did in the United States in October of 1879. However, Joseph Swan patented it 10 years prior to the January of 1879 date. Either way, it was Joseph Swan of the United Kingdom.
Yeah, but I mean, Edison's one. I mean, the thing was, Edison, as I say, he didn't invent a lot of the stuff that he's painted, but he created workable versions of it. So, like, Swan's one would burn out, and like you have a light bulb and it goes for 10 minutes and then it burns out. That is not a commercial. Well, Edison's one might last for weeks or days or whatever, and actually is a usable thing. So it's a question like which is the invention and which is the development of it. So
listen, this is a research project for homeschoolers, or do with your kids over the summer and learn something. And like you mentioned, there could have been other people around the world inventing the same thing around the time. So what was cotton candy or cotton floss?
Candy floss. And it's nothing to do with dental floss. we had a question about and yes, Chrissy, they didn't invent, the Wright brothers didn't invent candy floss. He says, taking it out of context.
Maybe they did. I mean,
yeah, they could have done, actually. It'd be ironic, wouldn't
it? You said the United States. You were right, I think. I wrote down United States, 1897, William Morrison and John Watson, I think, invented, I might have written it down wrong, but it was 1897 by the United States. However, I did read something else from the United Kingdom that mentioned candy floss. So go back and have a fun time researching that one too. That'd be a fun report with samples. Do you like candy floss?
It's all right. Somewhere I went, I think it was the Tribe conference, they had a whole selection of different tasting. They had like champagne candy floss or cotton candy, as you call it, and like strawberry one. That was quite nice. And like really expensive one, but I think they only had about like one. You can only have a small amount of it because it was quite expensive.
I like a bite. I like to taste it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the next question was, who invented the modern computer? Was this United States or UK? You answered UK. I wrote down 1937, George Stibitz invented what is known as the modern computer, and that predates some other computers like we use today. But 1937, George Stibitz, United States. So
yeah, well, I mean, it's very, the whole computer thing, I wouldn't even go there, because the trouble is, it's like, what does invent mean?
Yeah.
Because it was like Charles Babbage designed a computer in like 1880. Well, I mean, he was a British guy. We never built the thing. I don't know who this George person is. He may design something, but then the trouble is, there was a lot of stuff for the Enigma project that was done. It was classified until the 1970s. There was the code breaking thing at Bletchley Park. They had computer devices. So I think they're quoted as now as being the first computer thing in the world. But I don't know. I mean, it's what do you mean by computer? I mean, this is the thing. I mean, arguably, modern computers, you're talking about things like the Apple I or IBM or whatever. And even there were British computers and there were American computers around the same time. So I put that with a very big asterisk. I couldn't say it's not true. but I've never heard of the guy, so
This
I think
is
you made it up.
this is giving us all reason to read more. Okay, the next, GPS. Who invented the GPS? US or UK? You said US, and according to my very basic research, in 1994, the United States Air Force created the GPS.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The steam engine, United Kingdom, 1698, Thomas Savery. Am I saying his name? Is it Savery? And by the way, there was a lot of different versions of trains and steam engines and
yeah, because I'm pretty sure the Newcomen engine is before that. But it's not a steamer. It's not a train transport one. It's for pumping out mine shafts. So it's a concept of a steam, but it was the size of a room, basically. It was like they put them in mills to pump water out. I think that's the first actual one. But the one you're talking about may be the first transport one.
I think it'd be really fun to do a timeline of trains for kids. Maybe build a train, maybe build a train line. I don't know, but do a timeline of the history of.
A bit of a.
Are you researching already? What are you doing?
Yeah, I was just going to. Oh, actually, he does mention Savary in here.
16.
But he's got a whole load of other people.
Yeah.
What
does it say about
steam device? Well, let me share my screen. So, like the Newcomen atmospheric engine, but then it's like Savary's miner's friend. But then there's also these other people. There's a Spanish guy. There's a Spanish guy, Jeromo, whatever his name is, Beaumont, and he's 1609. And there's something about coffee percolators.
Savory. Okay. Huh. What a fun homeschool project. Do a timeline and build a train, model train.
Cannot eventually regard as first steam engine since no moving parts and cannot transmit to any external ice. So what did it actually do? According to creating it was fairly slow, so oh God knows. I think that might be a definition.
I can't read this. The writing's too small, but before the United Kingdom, who did you say? Was it a different country?
Yeah, there's a guy at Spanish. Hang on. It's this guy. He demonstrated and he was granted a patent for it. Jeromo Beaumont.
In Spain, okay.
And then there was this Edward Somerset guy who did a thing. But apparently those can't classified as steam engines for some reason, which I don't really understand.
Okay.
But yes, I think that may be something to do with the whole definition thing. I mean, this is the other thing. It's like if you invent something very similar to something else, is that the first?
Well, you made a good point. I mean, if we go back and research, I asked what the first successful flight was. If we go back and research who was drawing up all the plans, we're going to go back even far. I mean, they didn't actually ever get anything off the ground, but there's plans that were written a lot farther back than someone even got into the air.
Leonardo da Vinci did these helicopter plans, didn't he? Like 15 something rather. And somebody, I think somebody tried to build it.
And there was something even.
But anyway, who like let's cut all the thing. Who was your opinion,
What did you say?
who was the first flight person in your opinion research?
In my humble research, the first successful flight was using gliders. You might want to look this up again because there's a whole history of flights. But first successful flight getting off the ground using gliders was UK in 1849. However, going into the topic of the Wright brothers, it seems, according to my research, that Russia may have gotten something off the ground 20 years prior to the Wright brothers.
Yes, but I go back to I did it to you if I can find the if I can remember what the hell they're called, the Mongolia brothers. That's it. This is when my Wi-Fi is not playing up. Hot air balloon. That's the thing. First. Right. Stream. So the first manned flight was 1783 by the Mongolia brothers.
Was that Russia? Oh, wait a second. No.
No.
France.
Did they teach you anything about the Mongolia brothers in the US? Because people went. Well, I mean, actually, even this is a bit because there are rumors that the Chinese flew like millennium before.
Yeah, and I saw that. I did see that. I saw that in my research. You feathered flight. Okay.
First manned flight, and that was 1793. That's well beyond the first glider person.
Yeah. Keep going up. I want to see what else it says.
Okay. Precursor hot air, but the sky lantern.
Balloons.
They didn't have people in them.
Oh, yeah.
There's a guy in Portugal. Lots of stuff in Portugal, but I don't know if they actually did anything with it. But the first manned flight was 1783 by the Mongolia brothers.
Okay.
Who were French.
And they used balloons. Oh, okay.
I mean, this is, but arguably, there may be other ways to. I can't think of any other way like people could, but I'm fairly sure they were the first. Because balloons were like around for centuries before the Wright brothers.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, this is it. It gets really interesting to start doing a timeline and kind of seeing the progression of all of these inventions and going way back. I find that interesting. I'm kind of.
I mean, there's probably somebody who jumped off the side of a mountain and did like the whole free glide thing. They probably did that before.
Yeah.
The
first chocolate bar, was that UK or US?
I said UK. I think of things like Bourneville and the rest of it, but I really don't know. I mean, that might be Italian.
Honestly, I don't think it's either US or UK, but my research said 1847, J.S. Fry and Sons had the first chocolate bar.
Where?
J.S. Fry and Sons. Do you recognize that name?
Oh, what? Like there is a Fry's chocolate.
It might be the same. Yeah, it might be the same.
They make like this cream. It's nice, very nice. I think they're British. No idea.
Seems to me like it would be Italy or Switzerland or something. But
well, that's the other thing. I mean, it's like, what do you define as a chocolate bar? I mean, if somebody makes a tiny little square bit of chocolate, is that a chocolate bar? Does the chocolate bar need to be wrapped up? Yeah, I've just thought of an awesome guest. Oh no, he can't really come on the show because it's the wrong time zone. But I know a guy called John Capos, Chocolate Johnny, who runs a chocolate shop in Australia. We ask him about that.
Bring some food on. Okay, so who was it? Okay, pretty sure this is correct. However, first mammal clone. You said UK. The correct answer is UK. Dolly the sheep was in 1996.
Yeah, I mentioned Dolly the sheep.
Yeah, you were right.
But I kind of think like, well, sheep's a big animal to go for as a first clone, though, isn't it? You think they would have done like a mouse or something?
I kind of agree with you. I do. I bet if we researched further, we'd find something else elsewhere.
I'm sure it probably is the UK because I don't think there was some sort of cloning arms race. As I said, like it's not like the space
on first.
The US has a gerbil, and now the UK has a sheep.
Who invented the microwave? Was it the United States or the United Kingdom?
I think I said it was the US, didn't I?
Yeah,
I don't know.
I wrote down the US in 1945. And that's it.
It wasn't.
We now know that we have a lot of research to do.
Well, no. When you said like that you were doing inventions, I was like, this has just got a whole like.
It's interesting discussion, though, right? This is the kind of stuff where this is what I do for fun. You know what I do for fun? I watch the History Channel. That's fun to me. I read.
Well, I hope you watched that video about Eugene Debs and the election of 1920.
I need to go back and watch that. That's the kind of stuff. Yeah. Anyone wants to send me YouTube videos or history, I love it. Ancient history, I love it.
I'll tell you, a really good YouTube history channel to watch is World War II in real time. It's not really in real time, but it doesn't tie it. I wish they'd done it a year later, but since they started in 2018, 1939, and it's basically the same time they've been doing it in real time. So every week they've been saying what's happening in the war as if it was like whatever number of years earlier. So that right now they're going it's like Operation Barbarossa, so where the Germans are invading Russia. And that's a really interesting channel to follow. It's a whole time ghost thing. That's an interesting YouTube channel to follow because every week they do a show about what's happened in the war that week. So they've been doing it for
I see what you're saying. So literally, like this week, right now, they're showing what was happening in
1941.
Okay.
So last year they were showing what was happening in 1940, and the year before it was 1939.
Okay.
I wish they'd done it in sync, though. I wish they'd done so. This was 1940, but they started it like a year before the in sync version would have been. But no, it's very interesting because it's like every week they do a show, and because it's the German invasion of Russia is starting now. They're doing like three this week.
Okay.
So it's just insert detail of World War II.
Oh yeah. That's interesting.
They actually did one of the Great War. I think that's where they started. They did one of the Great War from about 2014 to 2018, as if the whole year's the century. That's how they started, and now they're doing the Second World War.
Oh, okay. Well, that's what I'm watching on YouTube. If I'm not watching that, I'm watching cooking, or trains, or growth-minded YouTube videos, TED Talks. That's my. That's my.
I watch all sorts of. I watch quite a lot of political stuff from both sides of the spectrum. Actually, it's quite interesting. Like you can watch it how Like, you can watch a right-wing one and their view of the event will be the opposite of like, and the funny thing is that there are true points to both of them in a way. There is a lot of airbrushing that goes on. The funny thing is now, what you would say, quote, the mainstream media seems to diverge from both realities. So it's, yeah, I think there's a lot of pressure on journalists at the moment to find stories, and it's like in the UK, as you were saying, like they opened the pubs at the weekend, and like obviously the journalists are going to be looking for places. Like I knew they would be showing like pictures of people like crowded out drinking,
Yeah.
and that's what they did. But they picked like Soho in London, and it's because there were so many pubs in such a like crammed area that they couldn't. I mean, they were going to be, but you could actually watch if you actually looked at what was happening in the video. The police were going through, making sure that people were kind of a meter apart. But it was like, oh no, like everybody's going, it's the end of the world, and it's like, well, no, you found the worst possible example to show.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of like everybody, like, I mean, clearly there were problems, but it's, yeah, I mean, they were looking for a problem.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's
anyway,
I think it's
well over time. And
we are. I think in some, be kind to your neighbor.
Yeah.
In some, it's so important to have discussions, I think, with people from around the world so we can hear perspectives outside of our bubble. It's enlightening. You learn a lot. We can ask questions. We can listen. Each week we get to ask each other questions, Tim. I get to learn something new, and people join us. So I think we need more discussions like this happening around the world, more gathering. But that's it for today. Tuesday, who do we have coming on the show?
It's
Jeremy Mark
poet.
Rich. Jeremy Mark Rich.
Yes.
Author, poet,
artist, isn't he?
Artist,
as
social
well.
Justice, warrior, very smart, intelligent, kind person. It'll be fun to chat with him for a bit. So we'll be back on Tuesday. I will see you. Thank you, Andrea, Tim, Chrissy, Beth, for joining us and chatting with us.
I think we lost a lot of them.
We got carried away with the inventions and the history. We just got going.
Well, everybody was pretty sad. What about the Montgolfier brothers for the manned flight thing? And it's like, I thought everybody knew the Montgolfier brothers would be a hot air balloon. Anyway, I have got an outro video, so we can actually end. So, see you guys on Tuesday.
Bye.